The ballroom echoed with laughter as the CEO leaned back in her chair, her diamond necklace catching the light. She smirked at the janitor mopping near the stage and pointed toward the grand piano. "Play this piano and I'll hire you," she said mockingly, expecting him to stumble. But when Daniel Carter, a 36-year-old janitor, pressed his first note, the sound that filled the room made every guest freeze. Before we dive in, drop a comment with where you're watching from, and don't forget to hit subscribe for more videos like this. Let's begin. ***. The moment Daniel's fingers touched the keys, the music didn't just play, it poured out like it had been waiting years to be heard. His hands moved with practiced ease, coaxing out chords that vibrated through the marble hall, rich and haunting. The laughter died. Glasses stopped clinking. Even the waiters froze mid-step. The CEO, Vanessa Holly, 42, white, immaculate in her designer gown, felt her smirk falter. She hadn't expected sound like this. She had wanted to humiliate him, to remind him of his place. Instead, the janitor had just stolen the room from her. Daniel didn't look at her. He played with his eyes half closed, the way someone does when they aren't showing off. They're remembering. Each note carried something heavy, something raw. And when the melody slowed, his voice broke into the music, soft and low. "This was my mother's song. She used to play it here." Before she passed, a murmur swept through the guests. The same piano. The same hall. Vanessa blinked. Her father had owned this building for decades. Suddenly, she remembered being a child, sneaking into the ballroom and hearing a woman's song. Could it be? Daniel stopped, standing slowly, his chest rising and falling. "You mocked me," he said quietly, his voice trembling. "But the only reason I took this job was so I could keep this piano polished. It's the last thing I have of her." The silence was suffocating. Guests shifted uncomfortably, realizing the cruelty in Vanessa's dare. An older man near the back, a security guard in his 50s, stepped forward and clapped once, twice, then stronger. Soon the applause filled the hall, not polite but furious, as though the crowd needed to redeem themselves. For the first time in years, Daniel smiled faintly. And then, breaking the tension, he bent down and handed a small cupcake from his pocket to a little boy hiding behind a chair, his son, Adam, age 8. "I saved this for you, buddy," he whispered. The boy's eyes lit up, proving that kindness didn't need chandeliers or stages to shine. It lived in small, quiet moments. But Vanessa wasn't clapping. She sat frozen, her chest tight, her mind racing. She had just mocked a man who might hold the one story her family had tried to bury. And the truth, she feared, was about to rise louder than any song. Vanessa. Hale's manicured fingers gripped the edge of the table so tightly her knuckles whitened. She was used to controlling every room she walked into, her laughter loudest, her authority unquestioned. But tonight, she couldn't control her own heartbeat. It pounded in her ears as Daniel, the janitor she had mocked, stood in front of her with his son. The applause still thundered, echoing against the ballroom's vaulted ceilings. Vanessa hated it. Every clap felt like a verdict against her. She tried to compose her face, to recover the smirk she wore like armor, but it slipped away. Her lips trembled instead. Daniel didn't look at her. He crouched down to wipe frosting from his son's cheek, whispering something that made the boy giggle. The sound carried through the hall like sunlight breaking through storm clouds, a warmth that stunned Vanessa in places she didn't want to admit. Who taught you that piece?" she demanded, her voice sharper than she intended. Daniel turned, his eyes steady, his jaw tense. "My mother. She used to play it every night before bed. Said it kept the world from feeling so cruel." The words hit Vanessa like a slap. She remembered being maybe 6 or 7 years old, sneaking into the back of the ballroom when her father entertained clients. She'd sit beneath the piano, hidden, listening to a woman play that same melody. It had been soft, like a lullaby for ghosts. "You're lying," she whispered. though her voice cracked. "I don't lie," Daniel said, his tone calm but cutting. "I clean floors for a living. People like me don't get the luxury of lies." The guests shifted uncomfortably, some whispering, others glaring at Vanessa for her earlier cruelty. She could feel her empire of power cracking. One moment of arrogance had undone years of carefully built reputation. Daniel placed a hand on Adam's shoulder. "Come on, buddy. Let's go. We don't belong here." But as he turned, Vanessa's voice rose, panicked. "Wait," Daniel stopped. Slowly, he turned back, his eyes guarded. "Your mother," Vanessa said, swallowing hard. "What was her name?" "Evelyn Carter," he replied without hesitation. The name punched through Vanessa's chest like ice. Evelyn Carter. The name had been whispered in her family like a curse. Her father, the late Richard Halley, had dismissed Evelyn as the maid with delusions, a woman he'd ordered out of their estate after a scandal Vanessa had never fully understood. But she remembered the music, the warmth. And now here was Evelyn's son, standing in front of her, making her feel smaller than she'd ever felt. I knew her," Vanessa admitted, her voice breaking. "She used to play for me when I was a child. My father forbade it. Said she was wasting my time." Daniel's jaw tightened. "Your father destroyed her. She died cleaning other people's houses just to keep food on the table. That piano was the only place she felt like herself." The silence in the hall grew unbearable. Vanessa wanted to scream, to defend herself, to insist she was just a child back then. But the truth was ugly. She had inherited her father's cruelty without realizing it. Tonight, it had shown. A guest, a middle-aged man in a navy suit, broke the silence. "Vanessa, you owe this man an apology." Whispers of agreement spread like wildfire. A few even nodded at Daniel, admiration glowing in their eyes. Vanessa's pride roared inside her chest. Apologize? She had never been told to apologize in public, not once. But the look in Daniel's eyes wasn't victory, it was exhaustion. A man beaten down too many times who had nothing left to lose. And behind him, Adam's small hand clutched his father's pant leg, eyes wide, silently begging the adults not to hurt him anymore. Something inside Vanessa cracked. She rose from her chair, heels clicking on the polished marble, and walked toward the stage. Her diamond necklace glittered under the chandelier, but she suddenly felt it choking her. "I mocked you," she said, her voice carrying across the hall. "I tried to make you small in front of these people, but the truth is, you're larger than any of us tonight." "I'm sorry, Daniel." Gasps rippled through the guests. No one had ever seen Vanessa Halley apologize. Daniel's expression didn't soften. "Words are easy." She swallowed, her throat dry. "Then let me prove it." She turned to the crowd. "This man isn't just a janitor. He's a musician, a son carrying his mother's legacy. And starting tomorrow, he's no longer a janitor here. Daniel Carter will be our new cultural consultant, paid fairly, with the resources to share his gift." The guests erupted in applause again, this time genuine. Daniel blinked, stunned. "You don't have to do that." "Yes, I do," Vanessa said firmly. "Because I watched you play and realized my father was wrong. He dismissed your mother's worth. I won't repeat his mistake." Adam's eyes widened. "Dad, does that mean you don't have to clean floors anymore?" Daniel crouched and hugged his son tight. "Maybe, buddy. Maybe things are changing." The boy's face lit up with pure joy, and for a fleeting moment, Daniel's walls cracked enough for gratitude to seep in. He looked back at Vanessa, still cautious but less hard. "Don't do this for guilt," he warned. "Do it because you actually care." Vanessa nodded, her eyes glistening. "I'll prove to you it's more than guilt, and yet, deep inside, Daniel couldn't shake the suspicion that the truth of his mother's past was bigger than either of them realized. He had played one song, but it had struck chords buried for decades, and he knew this wasn't over. Not by a long shot. The applause still echoed in the ballroom, long after Vanessa's announcement, but Daniel Carter felt no triumph in it. He had played his heart out, cracked open a wound that had never healed, and now stood at the center of a storm he hadn't asked for. His son, Adam, clung to his hand, smiling with innocent hope. But Daniel's own chest was tight with suspicion. He studied Vanessa Holly. Her expression was softer now, almost trembling, as though she had shed a mask she'd worn for decades. But Daniel had learned the hard way wealth and power rarely gave without strings attached. "Why now?" he asked, his voice low but cutting through the applause. "Why offer me a title tonight in front of everyone? Is this about fixing your image? Or is this about my mother?" The room hushed again. Vanessa's carefully painted composure faltered. She exhaled shakily, her eyes darting to the piano as though afraid of its memory. "Because the truth I've buried for years is about to eat me alive," she admitted. "Your mother wasn't just our maid, Daniel. She was more." Daniel's chest tightened. "Say it." Vanessa's throat bobbed as she forced the words. "She was my father's lover, my father's shame, and my father's secret war against her destroyed her." Gasps filled the air. Guests leaned closer, their curiosity mixing with horror. Daniel froze, his blood running cold. He had suspected something in the shadows of his childhood doors, closed too quickly. Whispers behind walls, but hearing it aloud felt like being thrown into fire. "You mean to tell me," Daniel growled, "that while she broke her back raising me, cleaning strangers' homes, your father lived like a king, never once admitted what he'd done?" Vanessa's eyes shone with tears she could no longer blink away. "Yes, and I was the little girl who sat under that piano, listening to her play, loving her like a mother, but never daring to say it out loud. I betrayed her by staying silent. Tonight when you played, it was her voice all over again. I couldn't run from it." The words cracked something open in Daniel. For years, he had painted the Hales as faceless monsters, the family who had destroyed his mother. But here was Vanessa, trembling, confessing that she too had been trapped in her father's cruelty. "You could have helped her," Daniel said bitterly. "One word from you, and maybe she wouldn't have died working 2 jobs, coughing blood while I tried to feed myself as a kid." Vanessa's tears spilled. "I was a coward. I can't undo it. But I can start by giving you what my father stole." The crowd buzzed, unsure whether this was redemption or spectacle. But before Daniel could respond, Adam tugged his father's sleeve. His small, innocent voice broke the tension like sunlight cutting fog. "Dad, maybe we should let her try." Daniel looked down at his son, those wide brown eyes searching for hope in a world that had given them so little. He thought of Evelyn, how she had hummed while scrubbing dishes, how she had told him kindness was the only inheritance worth leaving. He straightened, locking eyes with Vanessa. "If you mean this, prove it. Don't just give me a fancy title. Fund scholarships for kids like Adam. Bring music programs back to schools your father cut. Give people like my mother a chance to be more than someone's servant." Vanessa blinked, stunned. Slowly she nodded. "Done. I'll start tomorrow." The audience erupted again, this time with approval that shook the chandeliers. People cheered, not for Vanessa, not for Daniel, but for the justice they had just witnessed. For the first time in years, Daniel felt the weight in his chest lighten. Not vanishgars don't vanish, but ease, as though Evelyn herself was in the room, smiling at her son for finally demanding the dignity she'd been denied. Vanessa stepped closer, hesitant. "Daniel, one more thing. You said you played to remember your mother. But I want you to play again. Not just for her, for Adam. Show him that pain can turn into something beautiful." Daniel glanced at his son. Adam's face glowed with anticipation. He had seen his father mop floors, patch clothes, carry exhaustion on his back. But tonight, maybe, he could see his father in a different light. With a deep breath, Daniel sat back at the piano. His hands trembled at first, but then settled. This time the song was brighter still, Evelyn's melody, but laced with hope. It filled the hall like sunlight breaking after a storm. Adam leaned against the stage, smiling, while Vanessa closed her eyes, letting the notes wash over her dot when the last chord faded. Silence held for a heartbeat before the room exploded in applause, so loud it shook the air. Daniel stood, his son rushing into his arms. And for once, the janitor wasn't invisible. He wasn't mocked. He wasn't small. He was a man who had carried music through ashes, a man who had turned humiliation into strength, and a man who, with one song, had forced an empire to face its sins. As he carried Adam out of the hall, Vanessa's voice followed him. Your mother would be proud. Daniel didn't answer. He didn't need to. In his heart, he already knew she was.